This is every single X-Men movie ranked, and it's coming up right after this. If you love movies and you love talking about them, make sure you hit that subscribe button and become part of our notification squad by hitting the bell. And if you dig our content, make sure you give the video a like. What's up, nerds? My name's Ryan, and today we are locking down the X-Men franchise and working out which one is the worst, which one is the best. We're doing a ranking. It's happening. Okay, before we get into the ranking, let's just make something clear. This is just my opinion. If you have a different opinion to how my ranking sits, let us know in the comments below and let's get a friendly chat going on about it. So first off, let's talk about the worst. We're going to go worst to the best. The worst. Unfortunately, if you've watched my review, you know what that's going to be. And it's going to be X-Men Dark Phoenix, the latest movie in the franchise. How could it possibly be the worst? It has such a great franchise before it. There's a plethora of comic books that you could pull storylines from, and they've gone with a tale that they've already told prior. They can learn from their mistakes from the prior movie that came out before this, X-Men Last Stand. But you know what? Simon Kinberg, the writer and director of this movie, learnt nothing from Last Stand. He wrote that movie, so he's a problem here. So straight off the bat, this movie goes right to the bottom for that reason. If they've already made this movie prior, why make this movie at all? If you can't do it better, what's the point? There are plenty of X-Men ideas out there that they could have done. They chose this, they did it horrendously. It's at the bottom for that very reason. But other reasons also, they've ruined certain parts of the X-Men franchise. They've made characters lame. They've just made up powers. They've made up mutant powers. The whippy dude, the guy with the whips in the hair.
Crack that whip. Licorice whip.
X-Men Dark Phoenix is ranked the worst of the X-Men franchise. But let's move up. Coming in at number 6, we have X-Men Last Stand. Now this obviously is one of the worst X-Men movies, and for me it's the second worst. Now the reason why it's good for me is because it has balls, it has big kahunas. It comes out of the banks of the first and second movies, and now while it's not as good as those movies, it has the balls to kill off a bunch of characters. And while it might have not done it in the best way, it does it in a way that it's kind of like, shit, they just killed off Professor X, and somehow it did it better than Dark Phoenix. And that's what matters. It also has some great parts to it. Kelsey Grammer's Beast is great. It's probably one of the biggest features of this film that just makes it awesome. Also, I'm a big fan of Ben Foster. Seeing him here as Angel was a really great moment. He was really underused, but having him in the movie just in general for me is a great thing. I think one of the biggest problems with this movie is that it was trying to tell two different stories. Having the cure for the mutants and also having the Dark Phoenix saga in one movie intertwined was just a terrible idea. There's too many plot points going on, and it also felt quite cheesy with a lot of the sequences. The camera work and stuff like that was pretty bad. But we also got to see the Danger Room, which was kind of cool, right? I mean, can you say anything like that with Dark Phoenix? Was there anything amazing in that movie where you say, shit, we got to see that in this movie that doesn't beat this? I don't think so. So either you're with me or you're not with me, but this movie is better than Dark Phoenix. I'm saying it. It is. Watch it again and then watch Dark Phoenix. This is the better movie. Coming in at number 5, we have X-Men Apocalypse. Now, let's talk about some good things about this movie. We have a great introduction to the new young X-Men cast. So we've got Jean Grey, played by Sophie Turner, and then we've got a great new Cyclops, new Nightcrawler, and these guys are great. We want to see more of them. Unfortunately, they cut out a lot of sequences from this movie that I think would have been really cool. It's set in the 80s, and there was meant to be this big mall sequence, which would have been really cool to see. I mean, that's one of the most iconic things to do in the 80s, right? Is to go to the mall. Why would you cut that out? But it also has one of the coolest sequences of any X-Men movies, and that's the Quicksilver sequence going through the Xavier School for the Gifted and just pulling people out as it's exploding. Very cool. But unfortunately, it's brought down by a terrible villain. Apocalypse in the comic books is this great big mastermind behind the mutants. He's the first mutant. He's huge. He's stoic. He knows what he's doing. He's really, really intelligent, and he takes on the X-Men in some really cool ways. And we've got the Age of Apocalypse storyline, which is unreal. But here, it's kind of devoid from that. He's very boring, he's very bland, and he also looks like Ivan Ooze from the Power Rangers movies. And I don't think it was Oscar Isaac's fault. He unfortunately was just in a terrible movie. But as I said, it does have some great moments, so that's why it's sitting at number 5 and not at the bottom. So now we're heading into the good stuff. So number 4 is coming in at X-Men Days of Future Past. Now this movie is really cool for the fact that it's bringing in the old X-Men franchise and the new X-Men franchise. The stuff that we learnt from the First Class movie all the way back to X-Men 1. We're bringing in Patrick Stewart's Professor Xavier, meeting up with James McAvoy's Professor Xavier, and it's just a really cool concept to really bring these two franchises together. It also did something really smart in a way that it got rid of a lot of the events that happened in The Last Stand by killing off a lot of characters that happened in The Last Stand. Here, because it's set in the future, it deals with a lot of that and retells it in a way that actually doesn't happen. So it gets rid of a kind of crappy movie and does it in a really smart way. Well done. It also has the great storyline of Hugh Jackman going back to the past and stopping Mystique trying to kill Trask, which is really cool stuff. I'm really glad that they kind of stuck to the comic book idea of that. It's not absolutely perfect, obviously, but it's you know, along the lines. We get Bishop, we get a lot of the story points that are in that movie, and they do it really well. And it's also the great return of Bryan Singer. Now, say what you want about Bryan Singer these days, but back in the day when he was doing these movies, especially Days of Future Past and X-Men 2, he was great. He knew what he was doing. He brought character development into a great storyline and really showed the world that superheroes weren't just comic book, you know, colorful characters. They could be humanized characters and really give out cool storylines with great character development and really great drama. And he did that. That was all him. Number 3 is X-Men. Now this one really started off the superhero franchise. We really got to see, as I said prior, that Bryan Singer really brought this universe to the world. It really started off the superhero genre and really gave a name to Marvel and said that, yeah, we know that Superman came out prior, we know that the Batman movies came out prior, but they really made the superheroes colorful and, you know, kind of didn't give them much character or depth or anything like that. Here, we really got to see that the X-Men universe and the characters that are in the franchise could really be dramatic and give off great performances and really give a great storyline. I loved it when I was growing up, and it still, to this day, is really cool, and it lives up to the rest of the franchise, and that's why it's sitting at number 3. Number 2, X-Men First Class. Now, I know a lot of people don't actually like this movie, but let's remember that this movie came out a couple of years after X-Men Last Stand. X-Men Last Stand was terrible and it kind of killed the franchise. And the X-Men universe was kind of looking for something to really reinvigorate the franchise and really look for something fresh and new. And enter Matthew Vaughn. And Matthew Vaughn was meant to direct X-Men Last Stand, but he jumped off the project because at the time Bryan Singer was originally meant to direct it, but he went on to Superman Returns. And once at that point, there was this little gap where Matthew Vaughn was on board to direct this movie, but he pulled out because the producers of the film wanted to get the movie out by a certain release date, and he just said, look, there's not the time to fix this movie, to fix the writing of the movie. I need more time, and if you're not going to move the release date, I'm not going to do the movie. And so he didn't do the movie, and that's why Brett Ratner did it. Now, Brett Ratner takes most of the blame for that movie being bad, but as I said in my review, it's Simon Kinberg. It's his problem. So, X-Men First Class, why is it great? Well, we get a really great villain in Kevin Bacon. He really brings that real cool class to him. We haven't seen this in a villain. He feels like a 1960s Bond villain. And that's when this movie's set, in the 1960s. So we get to see some really cool stuff. Rose Byrne is here. You get a really cool look into the X-Men, you know, origins and how they really started out. We get the first really cool look at James McAvoy as Professor Xavier and what he can do, you know, in the footsteps of Patrick Stewart. And he really takes the role, you know, on his own and does completely different than what Patrick Stewart did before him, but in a way that he still feels like the Patrick Stewart that's going to come up, you know, later on when these movies are set. And then you also get Michael Fassbender. Now, not many people at this point knew who he was. He was in Inglourious Basterds, but here he really got to shine in a role for the first time, and you could really see that he could be a leading man. This really started off his career becoming the actor we know and love, and really showing how Magneto really started. I mean, we got touches of it in the first X-Men movie, but really we got to delve deep into his origins and how that all happened and how he became the Magneto that is so hateful and just wanted the revenge that he got later on in the movie. And how can we forget that scene where he walks into the bar and takes out those 3 dudes that treated him like shit in the war camps? Oh man, that is one of the coolest moments in any X-Men movies. This movie's pretty great, and that's why it's sitting at number 2. Number one for me is X2. Now this does everything that the first X-Men did, but better. It has a greater storyline for Hugh Jackman. We get to see his real origins and how he gets adamantium in his body. We get to introduce to Stryker and how Wolverine's kind of dealing with his problems with him. Some really cool emotional and dramatic moments with Hugh Jackman and Stryker in this sequence. Also probably one of the greatest openings to any of the X-Men movies, with Nightcrawler breaking into the White House trying to kill the president. Fantastic. I think that use of his ability to be able to teleport through different places was just the best use of his power at this point. I think Quicksilver became that kind of, showing off a superpower with a really cool way, further into the franchise. But here we really got to see an awesome character in an awesome way that I don't think had ever been done on film before. But that sequence, I think, is just probably one of the highlights for any of the X-Men movies. Also, the raid on Professor Xavier's School for the Gifted, and Wolverine jumping over the top rope. That's some really cool stuff. We really got to see Hugh Jackman shine as Wolverine in this movie. But basically, this is the best of the franchise because it really shows off the characters, the dramatic tension that the X-Men franchise brings. X-Men 2 has so many cool X-Men moments that if I was doing a top 10 X-Men moments, this would at least be 5 of them I can think of. We've got the Wolverine showdown in Xavier's School of Gifted. We've got the Nightcrawler sequence. We've got the Magneto sequence where he takes the metal out of the security guard's butt, and also the origins of Wolverine in this movie. Done way better than what X-Men Origins Wolverine did. Oh my god, that's a mouthful. Try and get me to say that 7 times. I won't do it. So that's all of the X-Men franchise ranked. If you agree with me, let us know in the comments below. If you don't, also let us know in the comments below. And let's get a friendly chat going on about the X-Men franchise. And until next time, we'll catch you nerds at the movies.